Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our latest presentation as part of NordCal SCI presents Virtual as a New Reality series of sessions we're providing thanks to a grant from the Ree Foundation. My name is Franklin. I'm one of the two co-founders of NordCal SCI, and it's great to have all of you here on tonight, or this afternoon rather, this morning on California time. And I'm pleased to introduce a couple of good friends that are going to be leading today's session on the importance of range of motion and stretching. So a couple of housekeeping items. If you are wondering, everyone has been muted in order to eliminate any kind of background noise. And so if you have any questions that you want to pose to our two leaders, please use the chat feature that's available right on your screen. We'll have about a 10-minute session towards the end of the presentation devoted to a Q&A session. Or alternatively, feel free to send us an email during the session. And that email address is info@nordcalsci.org. And we'll ask Rachel and Erin your questions. The second thing is that we are recording this presentation. So at any time, if you feel the need to leave the meeting or something happens that'll keep you from attending the rest of the meeting, do not be alarmed. We'll make the video available probably Monday or Tuesday of this coming week. So without further ado, let me jump right in and introduce our two presenters. Rachel is a nationally certified Pilates teacher, certified strength and conditioning specialist, a movement teacher specializing in working with people with neurological deficits, especially spinal cord injuries, and is currently pursuing her license in massage therapy. Erin has a doctorate of physical therapy and is a board certified neurologic clinical specialist. She is currently a physical therapist at UCSF and is a co-founder of No Limits Collaborative and has worked extensively with the spinal cord injury population. So it is my pleasure to introduce Rachel and Erin. Rachel, hello, good morning.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Alrighty, so let me do a screen share. All right. Okay, great. Awesome. Well, hi, welcome everybody. Franklin, thank you again for hosting us. This is our second session here. Excited to be here and excited that there's an opportunity to share more of the educational standpoint of what we do, because sometimes that can be lacking in this world. So yeah, thank you for having us. I hope everybody is staying safe and healthy out there with the fires if you're based in California. Yeah, let's jump into it here. Alrighty, so we're going to start with just a warm-up and a brief review of last session. So last session, for those of you who couldn't attend, was mindful movement. So we talked about meditation, mindful movement, and then we had some really easy and accessible self-release techniques. So I'm just going to take you through about a 5-minute or so kind of dropping into your body with a couple of self-release techniques. So I'll have you just come to a comfortable seated, or if you're already in a lying down position, that's fine too. Just making sure that your feet or your sit bones or something is grounded onto a chair or onto a floor in some way. All right, we'll close the eyes if that feels right for you. And I just want you to start by dropping into your breath. And without judging, just noticing where your breath is coming into your body right now. So do you feel like it's maybe in your neck? Do you feel that inhale coming into your chest or your ribs? Or are you able to feel that inhale all the way down into your low belly? And wherever you sense that breath, I just want you to invite it a little bit deeper. So this doesn't necessarily mean you're taking a bigger breath. It just means you're trying to drop that breath into your belly. So I'll have you place one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly. And just as if you were filling a vase of water, it would fill from the bottom up. So that's what we want to do with our breath. So when we inhale, I want you to feel that belly hand expand. And when you exhale, that hand should sink back in towards the spine. As you inhale, the hand will move away from you. And as you exhale, it will sink back into your spine. And it's okay if you're still noticing a shallower breath. You're just seeing if you can bring that a little bit deeper, a little bit lower into your body. You can take your hands down if you want, and then I just want you to start a body scan here. So I want you to, we're kind of taking inventory of the body. So I want you to notice what in your body feels good today. So how does your neck and your shoulders feel? How do your hips and your belly feel? What in your body feels maybe a little sticky, like it's holding on to some tension? Maybe you even feel tension in your jaw or through your throat. And then what in your body feels quiet? So whether that's due to a lack of sensation or just a lack of awareness, what parts of your body aren't speaking to you? And then lastly, I want you to set your intention for this class. So that can be as specific or as general as you want it to be. Just some kind of a goal, some kind of an intention. Let's take one more inhale, one more exhale, and we'll open the eyes. Okay, I'm just going to give you a couple of self-release techniques here. So using your fingernails or your knuckles, whatever you have accessible, I want you to give yourself a really, really nice head scratch. So all the way, you can outline your hair, make sure you get in the middle. You might even notice there's a tender spot in your head. You can spend an extra bit of time in that area. For those of you that wear ponytails or buns, sometimes that can cause tenderness in an area. And then I just want you to release that. And hopefully notice this nice buzz, this nice awareness going on in your head. So most of these self-release techniques are, the biggest goal is to just bring more awareness to your body. I'm gonna have you grab your ears. You can also, if grabbing your ears is hard, I'm just gonna have you find an ear rub around your ears. Otherwise you'll take a hold. And you're just gonna draw these little circles with your ears. Really gentle, really gentle. We're not pulling too hard. So a lot of these techniques also activate some of our cranial nerves, which again is just really good for bringing more sensory information into the body so that we can create a more efficient motor output. Great. And again, release the ears. Maybe notice if anything has changed in that area. And then we'll bring fingertips or knuckles, whatever you have access to, and we're just going to very gently tap the area right under your collarbones. And just kind of moving from the left to the right. You might even notice you take a big, I usually take a big sigh when I do this one. So we're helping the nervous system drop into more of a relaxed state. If you remember from last time, this is called our parasympathetic nervous system. So this is our rest and digest. Yeah, and now I want you to add a hum. So lips are closed. And you're just gonna hum with that. So again, this helps us drop us into our relaxed nervous system. When you inhale, try to just inhale through the nose. Going all the way out through the end of that hum. And then we'll relax. Good. And just kind of notice anything that's new with the body. Do you feel more dropped in? Do you feel more aware of any parts? Just a good warm up. And that could be something you start your day with every day too. That's kind of a quick and easy one. Alrighty. So I just want to talk briefly about posture, and I want to give a shout out to Stephanie. If you attended Stephanie's session just this past Thursday, a few days ago, she did a whole session on posture. So if you haven't seen that, I highly recommend you check that out, because this is just going to be kind of a brief overview of it. So when we think about posture and correct alignment and whatnot, we're thinking about we're not going for perfect. We're not going for this really beautiful, nice and upright posture. Maybe some of us are. Really, we're just trying to create more balance within the system. So that can be globally, that can be locally, meaning that can be in one part of your body, or it can be looking at the body as a whole. All we're trying to do is create a little bit more balance there. And I want to encourage you, and Stephanie also touched on this a little bit, to use props. So whether that's a rolled up towel, a piece of foam, you can get really creative with this kind of stuff, a wedge of some sort, even a squishy foam pad or a squishy ball, to help adjust your body, to lift a hip, to push a rib cage over to the side, to not be scared to use props. They're the kind of thing we don't want to completely rely on, but they can be really helpful when we're trying to find a little bit more of a balanced alignment with that. And then one of the biggest things I'm always encouraging my clients to do is just to wiggle more. So this can look like adjusting your posture in your chair, you know, a few times an hour. It can look like, if you have the ability to, it can look like transferring from your wheelchair to a couch or to a kitchen chair, so that your body is challenged in different ways, sitting on different surfaces with different backrests. And then it could just look like doing that warm-up we just did, where maybe we're shaking it out a little bit, we're giving the head a scratch, we're rotating from side to side. We're doing any number of movements to just wiggle the body more. Remember, the more movement your body gets, the happier it's going to be, and that can be small or big movement. So you'll see this photo of the house on the right. So again, one of the big things we talk about with posture is I think of posture and your pelvis as the foundation of a house. So that's typically where your posture misalignments and alignments start. So if we have a crooked foundation of a house, just like in this photo, everything on top of it, orienting to gravity, is going to try to correct itself out. The body does a really similar thing. So when the pelvis is maybe tipped one way, you'll see the rib cage tip the other way, and then you'll see the head tip the opposite direction, because the body is just doing its best to orient to gravity. So kind of like this picture on the, or I should say, unlike this picture on the right, we really want to address the foundation of the house. We want to address your pelvis first. So how can we use props or use movements, or how can we wiggle more to bring that pelvis into a more balanced position for you, so that the rest of your body can find a better of alignment on top. Okay, great. So getting a little bit more in to what we're going to be doing today. So range of motion stretching. Oops, let's see. There we go. So range of motion is just bringing a joint through its full available range of movement. So there's a few different kinds. There's active, active assisted, and passive. We're going to be focusing kind of more in the active assisted range when I'm demonstrating today, and perhaps how you will be at home. But the benefits of this kind of stretching are kind of what I was just describing with the posture. We're trying to bring more balance to the system, more balance to a joint. So for example, if you've got spastic or high tone in your shoulders and you have a hard time lifting your arm maybe above your head, doing a consistent, a daily kind of range of motion routine for your shoulders, bringing that joint through its full range, can help correct some of those imbalances. It can help release some of the tension in there, can also help with pain. Erin is going to get a bit into how to deal with the spasticity and the tone part of that. So a lot of benefits. Ranging has a lot of benefits, especially for those of you that find that you've got a little bit more spasticity and tone. Yeah, and of course, it's just, the point of this is just to bring more balance into your system. Yes, and then I want to mention one more thing, and you'll see when I'm doing the demonstration. Also to get creative with this, to explore with this a little bit. So some of you may need a caretaker, some of you just may need to find a creative way to use a band or to use a pulley system at home. using the wall, creeping your hand up a wall, maybe to stretch the shoulder out a little bit, using gravity or a door frame to pull your arms open, whatever that looks like for you. Just looking around your house, getting creative, exploring, and seeing what works for your body. All right, great. Erin, go for it.
All right. Hi, everybody. So we could do a whole hour-long session on just spasticity and tone, but for the purpose of today, we're just going to do a super quick, brief introduction on how this will apply to your daily range of motion program. A lot of times you'll hear spasticity and tone used interchangeably, and in actuality, they're pretty different. So spasticity is more due to the imbalance of signals that are being sent to the muscles. And you'll notice when you're moving your arms or legs quickly, that's when that spasticity is really going to kick in. It's what we call velocity dependent. Tone is something we all have it, just varying degrees. So it's the resistance of a muscle to passive stretch. Some people will be what we call hypertonic, where it's like there's a pretty strong resistance to that passive stretch. Some people will be what we call hypotonic, which means there's very, very minimal resistance. In a few minutes, Rachel's going to take you through the range of motion program. And just another caveat that everyone's body is completely different. So we want to give you as many kind of tips and tricks to put into your arsenal, and then you can kind of tailor your program as we go. And if you, as Franklin said in the beginning, if you have any specific questions about your individual range of motion program, either throw them in the chat, we can try to get them at the end, or email them to Franklin and we can try to address them as a group later as well. But 3 considerations when you're doing a range of motion program with either spasticity or hyper or hypotonicity. So stability, we always want to make sure that we are protecting our joints from either overstretching or just putting them into different positions that might be painful, especially if your pain receptors aren't working as they normally do. So Rachel will, when she does her hands-on demonstration, she'll show you kind of where to put their hands to make sure that we're protecting the joint from injury. Velocity, this is especially for our folks who have increased spasticity. So we want to go very, very slowly through the full range of motion to prevent the increased spasticity. And also this will prevent injury as well. So if you're moving slowly through a motion, your body will tell you when it's kind of hit that end point. And you won't, if you're moving quickly, you can kind of go into a point that might be painful and cause some injury to that tissue. For those of you who have increased tone, there's a strategy called what we call inhibition. So using different types of tips to decrease that tone. So either putting some deep pressure into that muscle belly as you're slowly bringing that joint through the full range of motion, that can kind of decrease that tone for the moment. And then also bringing in some multi-play movements can kind of trick that muscle into relaxing a little bit. So when Rachel does some of the hands-on, she can incorporate some of that. But yeah, if any of these sound like they apply to you and you have specific questions, please let us know. All right, Rachel.
Great, cool, thank you. Oops, let's see. Okay, great. Erin, can you see the daily dose of stretching slide on it? Yeah, great, okay. Okay, cool. So while I'm giving just kind of the precursor here, if you're not already in a position where you're going to be trying out, some of these stretches, go ahead and get into a position. For those of you that can get on a bed or a floor, that would probably be the easiest for you. Again, that is totally body depending, and if you've got a caretaker and what works best for you, or you'll just stay seated in your wheelchair. But I'll have you start to get set up as I take you through the beginning of this. So as Erin was saying, for a lot of this kind of stretching, we're never going to force anything. So whether you're the athlete or the caretaker, listening to your body, listening to the athlete's body, moving slowly through that range of motion, and keeping an a constant and open communication with your athletes, so that if you're starting to hit a range that maybe doesn't feel sticky for you, but feels sticky for the athlete, you're really talking through that. So you're feeling into the end range, you're moving slowly. And then another thing, I know that when it's really easy when we do these kinds of stretching routines, not necessarily on Zoom, but maybe just when you're at home doing this alone, it's easy to think about what you need to do during the day, your to-do list, everything, all of the stressful things in the world right now. But again, really encouraging you, going back to our first session, of really staying dropped into your body. So this is, you're trying to bring mindfulness into this movement, whether you have the sensation through some of these joints or not, whether you can assist with some of these movements or not. Again, just inviting you to get curious. So if you don't have sensation through a particular range of motion, you might be asking yourself, what might this feel like? If I can feel it in the shoulder, but it's hard for me to feel in the hip, what might this feel like? So just encouraging you to stay dropped in, to stay focused. I know that can be really challenging to do. So also bring some self-compassion into that. But just trying to stay inside and with your body and with the person that may be assisting you as much as you can. All right, so do you want to? Okay, so my assistant today is my partner. You can come in. Her name is Mia. So we're going to be working on the floor just for the ease of camera and everything, but you can be on a bed or in a chair. We're going to be going back and forth from a chair to the floor. Oh, and you know what? I'm going to go ahead and exit out of this screen share. Just give me one sec. All right, there we go.
And while Rachel and Mia are getting set up, if you all are familiar with Zoom, there's a way that you can, in your top right corner, if you hit speaker view, that will make Rachel's screen the biggest, and that way you'll be able to see a little bit better too.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Erin. And that reminded me, I also just spotlighted my video, so hopefully you all can.
There we go. See, I didn't even know you could do that. Fun tip.
Yeah. Okay, let me just make sure this is set up. Okay, great. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to be starting with, oh, and then just one more thing. I should have said this. You don't have to have these, but if you have these handy, having a rolled up towel of some sort will be helpful, especially for this first one. And I'll show you this in a minute. And then a pillow, if you need a pillow, and if you're on the bed, go ahead and grab a pillow. And/or I've got, don't mind the letters and the numbers on this, we'll get to that in a different session. I've got a half deflated squishy ball that we're going to use as a pillow for some of our cervical movements here. So I'm just going to put that aside, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a sec. Okay, so we're going to start we're going to kind of work our way from top to bottom. And we're going to start with some cervical rotation. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to be walking you through a few ways to do all of these. If you don't see a modification that works for you, hold on to your question, and then hopefully I can answer it at the end of the session. Okay, so we're going to start without the towel at first, and we're just going to start with something called cervical rotation, which is just turning your head to the left and the right. But I want you to do this with your eyes first. So our eyes dictate most of our movement and most of our decisions throughout the day. So before you even turn your head to the right, I actually want your eyes to go to the right, and then I want your head to go to the right. You're feeling into this as far as you comfortably can. Try to release any extra tension you might be holding in your shoulders. Then your eyes go to the left, then your head and your neck go to the left. Okay? And I just want you to slowly oscillate that back and forth. Eyes lead, head follows. Eyes lead, head follows. And when you get to each side, yeah, keep going. I'm just going to talk you through. When you get to each side, I want you to pause for a couple of seconds and really strain your eyes. This might even feel slightly uncomfortable for your eyes. Really try to see what is the furthest thing to the right behind me. What is the furthest thing to the left behind me? Okay, now for those of you that might be using a caretaker and/or are on the floor, I would be sitting here with with her. This angle might be a little interesting here, but you'll get the idea. My hands are under her head, and I'm just gently bringing her head one way. Just a little bit lower. Yep. And then just gently bringing her head the other way. And I'm encouraging her eyes go first. So eyes to the right, yep. And then head to the right. And she's thinking about doing as much of the movement as she can, eyes to the left, and then head to the left. Yeah. See, she's thinking about doing as much of the movement as she can, and I'm assisting her with what she can't do. Okay. Yeah, and you can do this seated or standing. Lastly, if you've got this ball, I'm gonna go ahead and stick this under your head. This is really nice because it gives you a bit of an air cushion. So we're gonna just do the movement on your own. Yeah, so the pillow doesn't get in the way, it doesn't get caught on your hair. She can also do flexion and extension, which is what we're gonna go into next. Okay, so I encourage you to use a towel here. Again, if you don't have one, not a big deal. Draping it around your neck. We use the towel for a couple reasons. It protects your head from throwing too far back, because we don't really want to do that. And it also gives your head a target if we're doing circles or if we're doing flexion and extension, which is just the yes nod. So that's what we're going to do here. So you can hold on to the towel or not. I'm just going to hold on because it gives me a little bit of support. And now we're rotating from that area just under the earlobe. So I'm not throwing my head back. I'm just nodding. I'm doing kind of an exaggerated yes nod. And remember, we're leading with the eyes first. Yeah, and I'm going to have you do that. So Mia's going to show you maybe what that looks like with the ball. And remember, that gives you some good range there. Eyes go first, head and neck follow. This can be a really good one, this neck flexion, meaning tucking your chin into your chest. Because a lot of folks out there seated in their chair have that shortened back of the neck tissue and muscles there. So when we can lengthen the back of the neck and shorten the front of the neck, it gives a really nice stretch to the back and it helps activate the front, which is really important for head and neck alignment. Okay, so moving into the shoulders a little bit. So I'm gonna take this from you. Okay, and if you were seated, you would be doing it in the position that I was doing it. Okay, for shoulder rolls, so I'm gonna show you in a seated position. Sorry, let me clarify that. Shoulder circles. So we're just shrugging the shoulders forward, up, back, and down. Forward, up, back, and down. Bringing your breath into it. Inhale up, exhale down. And you're just trying to bring your shoulders through as full of a range as you can. For those of you that are able and have that movement, so on the ground, Mia will show you that. Yeah, it might be kind of hard when you get back to push into the ground, but it's okay if your chest lifts off the ground a little bit. You're still doing the same movement. Now, if I were to assist her, I would be scooping under her shoulders here. Try to keep my leg out of the way, okay? And I would just be assisting. I'm kind of cupping her shoulders. My thumbs are on the top, and I'm pulling her shoulders up, down, and around if she needs assistance. But I think whatever range you have here on your own, supine, meaning on your stomach or seated, is always a good start. Yeah. One note that I didn't mention, for the caretakers out there, and if you remember that slide that I showed, I really liked that photo of that woman, and I'll go back to it at the end of this, but she was stretching a man's arm out while the man was in a seated position, and her thigh was on a table. So just a note for the caretakers out there to really also take care of your body. Because remember, if you hurt yourself doing any of this, you not only have hurt yourself, but you also won't be able to help your athlete. So, just saying in chat. Oh, great. Okay. So, making sure that you're using the body mechanics that work for you and that work for your athlete safely for both of you, and you're keeping this constant communication. Okay, so let me just close this down here. Great. Okay, so moving on to some shoulder range of motion. Okay, that's good there. So Erin was talking about how one of the ways we do joint protection is to keep a hand close to the body. So proximally meaning closer to the center of the body. So if Mia had a lot of tone and spasticity, and that's kind of the assumption that we're going to make for most of this range of motion work. If you are hypermobile, this might not be the best thing for you in a particular joint, but stay tuned for some of our shoulder work we're going to be doing in our next session, because that will definitely be for you. Okay, so kind of fight me here. So if I'm having a hard time opening up her elbow as the caretaker, I keep my hand, and this is what Erin was talking about, I keep a hand proximal to protect this shoulder, and then I just slowly, I'm not forcing anything, and I'm going to play with this a little bit, bringing the hand in and away until slowly that tissue starts to ease up. I like to think of this kind of work, and I like to think of tissues as like a turtle. If you wanted a turtle to come out of its shell, you wouldn't grab its neck and pull. You would kind of approach it slowly, quietly, and then when the turtle felt safe, it would withdraw, and then it would come out again. Tissue is similar, so we shorten the range of motion, so I'm shortening her elbow joint here, her elbow flexion, and then I'm slowly opening her up. And once I get to a place where I feel like, okay, that looks pretty good, I could probably start ranging out her shoulder. I've got one hand on the wrist, one hand on the elbow, and by the way, this will look similar. I'm going to show you this when we're in a seated position, but all the same rules apply when we're seated, but I'll show you that as well. And then I'm just going to start taking her shoulder through, and we're in constant communication. I'm feeling into her end range of motion. I'm moving slowly. And I'm just going to start to take her shoulder through. I'm starting with a circle because I'm trying to feel, I'm trying to feel where is she sticky? Where are those points where there's a little extra tension, a little extra tightness? And maybe when I feel that tension and tightness, I'm going to work with it and work through it a little bit until that tissue starts to release. And we can get a bigger range of motion. You also might not get a bigger range of motion, and that's fine. We're still benefiting the joints, the tissue, the muscle. Just gonna grab some water. Remember, the more a joint moves, the more we're lubricating that joint, the more we're lengthening the tissues in there. So after I've done some circles and things are feeling a little bit looser, I'm going to try to vary the movements here. So I might do a disco movement with her arm, where I have her tap her opposite hip and then bring that arm up and overhead. So I'm internally rotating her shoulder here, and then I'm externally rotating, meaning I'm turning the hand and the shoulder the other way as we bring that arm up and over. So internally rotate means her thumb goes down, her shoulder rolls inward, and external rotation is just the opposite. I can do the same going across the body. I can hold, I can continue to move through. There's really no wrong way to do this, as long as you're feeling into the end range, you're communicating with your athlete. And what was the last thing I was going to say? Yes, you can also focusing more on the shoulder blade. So I'm pressing down into the ground, and you can see her shoulder kind of pressing into the blanket. And then I can also lift up, and I'm cueing her. Remember, I'm cueing her to move with me and to work with me. So this is called scapular protraction and retraction. And again, we're going to get a bit more into this when we do the shoulder workshop for our next session. Okay, so you're just trying to move that arm in all of the directions that it's able to. You're easing into the directions that maybe it feels a little sticky. You could just focus on shoulder internal and external rotation here. So I've got a hand on the elbow as I open. She's doing like a goalpost arm. Yep. And then turning down the other way. I can set it on the ground, and we're just doing, and when I'm doing this one, I can also keep that proximal hand on her shoulder to give her a little bit more protection here. That also might depend the surface of you're working on, and might also depend on the range of motion that person has. Okay, so just briefly here, maybe one more thing before we jump up. If you're doing this without a caretaker and she's doing this on her own, you're doing all of the same things. You can use bands if you want, but you're doing all the same things. And I encourage you to also use pillows. So if you're feeling like your arm is tight, and again, this would be without a caretaker, I would maybe set up a couple pillows. So now she's supported. She did this on her own. She's supported, but she's lengthening this area of her chest and her arm. So there's giving yourself enough support when you're doing this on your own, where your body doesn't retract in like the turtle I was talking about. Do you want to hop up to the chair? Okay, so if you're doing this seated on a chair, it wouldn't be too much different. What's really going to be important here is the caretaker's body and how they're orienting. So maybe you do it near a couch where they can put their knee up and support themselves more, but you're going to be going through that same range of motion. Turn this up a little bit more. Yeah, same range of motion around, across, forward, back, using her elbow, bending, all of the ways. So really similar. The only thing that changes is how you as the caretaker are positioning your body. So you want to make sure you're keeping good body mechanics, your back is, you're keeping a neutral pelvis, neutral spine. And if you need to put a leg up on a chair, a stool, a couch near you to give you more leverage to move a body part, then definitely do that. Pop back down. Okay, so we're going to come now more into a hip range of motion. Okay, so all the same rules apply here. As the caretaker, so if she were doing this on her own, she might just, so I'll just show you this one. She might take her knee and sit back with it and hold, okay? If you're doing this with a caretaker, I'm going to put one hand under the knee. Again, I'm being mindful of my body mechanics. And one hand on her foot, on her ankle, whatever's comfortable for you. I like to ground her out on the bottom of her foot. It gives her a little bit more biofeedback. Okay? And I'm doing all of the same things here. I'm going to start by circling this hip around. And I'm just feeling for where it's sticky. I'm internally rotating the knee, meaning the knee is more inside of the ankle as it goes in. And I'm externally rotating that hip as I roll out, because I'm just feeling for where she might have stickiness. As a safety note here, for those of you that have HO, heterotrophic ossification, which is a bone buildup in the hips, you might have restricted hip flexors. So something really important to communicate with your caregiver maybe before you do this kind of a thing. So I'm going to start with the hip circles. Remember, the hip and the shoulder joint are similar, so we move those similarly. Yeah, and if I'm feeling a little bit of resistance, I can spend an extra time in a certain area. We can go to kicks, forward and back, and I'm cueing her as I go through all of this. So I'm not doing a very good job right now because I'm talking to all of you, but I would be cueing her, okay, kick into my hand, and then pull your knee up. Kick into my hand, and then pull your knee up, okay? So so you as the athlete are also staying connected to your body, you're staying active, and you're working with your caregiver. Okay, and then of course one of my favorites, and I think one of a lot of people's favorites, is the hamstring stretch. If she were doing this on her own, you could use a yoga strap or a towel So because I forgot the yoga strap, she would just be holding the towel. Can you grab this? Okay, your strap would be longer, but it would look something like this for a hamstring stretch. And it might have to be a little bit lower. You could let go. It might have to be a little bit lower so the knee doesn't bend and collapse on you. Otherwise, if you've got a caretaker, I have her knee, I'm gently pressing back. I'm not hyperextending her knee. I'm just straightening her knee. And then if I want to add an extra bonus, oh, I don't think they can see that. Hang on, hold your leg for a second. If I want to add an extra bonus, I could take her toes and dorsiflex them, which flexing the ankle here, to add more of a stretch to her back line. Okay, I can also add some hip internal external rotation into that if I want. I'm communicating with her. I'm talking about where her end range is, because if I don't feel it and she does, that's really important to know.
Rachel, I'm just going to jump in. So everybody just notice how when Rachel's doing the range of motion program as the caretaker, she's going super slowly and really feeling the stickiness, feeling for end ranges, and then in constant communication with the athlete. So just, I think if that's probably the biggest takeaway from today, if your caretakers are the ones doing the range of motion program, and that you feel comfortable kind of communicating what it feels like on your end as the athlete. All right, continue.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those are the big takeaways. Those are definitely the big takeaways. And then we'll just do a couple more here. So the foot and the ankle, even for those of you that don't have sensation or movement maybe into the foot and the ankle, these are two really important areas to continue to give love to in some way, shape, or form. I often see that people kind of ignore their lower legs, especially their feet if they can't feel them. But that doesn't mean that we're still not receiving, the body still isn't receiving feedback from the feet, and or you're still benefiting from doing this kind of work with the feet. So right now, all I'm doing is I'm giving her a stretch, so it's a calf stretch. So I'm taking one hand and I'm pressing down towards the floor on her ankle as I press the ball of her foot back towards her head, okay? And I can do that both ways. Now I'm pointing her foot, getting a nice stretch over the top of the foot, and I can just go back and forth. In fact, I can even bring that, and again, look at, I've got one hand on the closer joint, so I've got one hand stabilizing her ankle, as now, as I'm circling her ankle around. Really quick, let's hop back up here. So if you're doing some kind of a leg range of motion in a seated position, you can still do most of what I was telling you. So we can still, and I'm being very mindful of my body mechanics, I'm maybe going to scoop up under her knee. Depending on the chair and the situation, this might look different for you. You can even build some stools or pillows up for here. And we can work on, just like we were doing knee flexion and extension, kicking that leg up. This is going to be a pretty intense hamstring stretch, especially now because she's in a seated position. We can do those. We can do hip internal and external rotation to help lubricate that hip joint. It's really important for joints that we hit all of the areas. And then lastly, we can do some ankle and some footwork here, pointing and flexing. And notice as I'm doing this one, I'm keeping her legs slightly extended, so we keep that stretch on her back line, which can be really useful because if you are in a seated position all day, that back line, especially the hamstrings, comes to a really shortened position. Okay, I'm just going to throw in one extra bonus one this last couple of minutes here. So I'm going to come back. Oh, actually, no, stay up there. So we're going to do a rotation. For those of you that are seated, and I'll just have you do this with me, it will just look like a seated rotation where you're trying to look or to reach for something behind you. It's active. We're rotating from our thoracic vertebra, which is the area of our spine that is really meant for rotation. And if she needs an extra little bit of help, again, wheelchair depending how many things will be in the way, we're just using a little flimsy stool here. But as she rotates, I might have one hand on her ribs, on her back ribs, and one hand on her shoulder. Wait, let's actually make that so you can see this better. to rotate towards me. Okay, I don't know if that's any better. Okay, and then turning towards me, and I'm just giving her a little bit of assistance here. And I would cue her for her head, her eyes, her head, and her neck to rotate also. And then she would come back to the center. We would do maybe 6 or 7. We would come on the floor, and then we would switch sides. Okay, this is the very last thing. If we're emulating that on the floor, and you can also do this on your own. So I would have her, or I would help her roll onto her side. We'll get more into this floor-based movement in our very last session. So definitely more of this to come. I'm gonna go ahead and bend your knees. Yeah, so we're cheating here just for time purposes, and then we'll all go into your side. Because we'll be going over this more another session. I recommend using a pillow in between your knees here to keep your hips in better alignment. And I definitely recommend putting a pillow under your head here, so we're keeping the neck aligned with the spine. Okay, so for this one, and again, we're trying to make this as active as possible. I'm sitting on the back side of her, hand on the hip. If she needs assistance with my hand on her wrist, I'm gonna help her out here, and I'm gonna cue her to rotate just like we did seated. Your eyes, your head, and your neck will go, so start to look over at this wall. Yep. And I could even have an extra couple of pillows or yoga blocks or whatever it is. So if you're doing this on your own, remember, use support, use bolsters, pillows, yoga blocks, so that your body can find an easeful position. So if I weren't here, she could come into this position where she is still actively rotating, but she's also supported. Remember, the whole turtle metaphor, we're trying to let the tissues be in a relaxed position so they feel safe to come out into a lengthened state. One other thing here, if you are fused through your cervical vertebra, that neck rotation in the beginning probably won't be for you. Likewise, if you're fused or with rods through your thoracic vertebra, this might not be for you. So just stay with some of the other ones that we gave you for today. You can come all the way back. So then we'd be cueing her. Remember, I'm being mindful of my body mechanics. And inhale to rotate. And I've got a hand on her shoulder. She's looking, she's thinking about reaching out through her fingers if that's available for her. I can even give her fingers an extra little bit of a stretch. We didn't really get into the hands and the fingers, but that's also there just to find some hand openers. And then coming all the way back to the center. Yeah. Okay. And this can be really personal work. So if that means that I'm kind of over her doing this because that's safer for my body, I've gotten in some pretty funky positions before. So do what's safe for both you as the caretaker and you as the athlete. You're good. Okay, thanks. Okay. Maybe stick around just in case people have questions though. Yeah.
Rachel, one more thing that came up in the chat. If the athlete is not able to communicate verbally, having that communication be via either the eyes or facial expressions, but just make sure you have some open line of communication as the caretaker with your athlete while they're moving through. But yeah, thank you to Sheila who brought that up.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, if that means you kind of have a code with your face where you make a face of pain if they've gone too far, or winky or whatever it is, but the communication piece is really, really important. If you and your caretaker have been working together for a while and you really know each other's bodies, then maybe you won't be talking quite as much, but definitely in the beginning, that is, a code of communication is important. Yeah, it's a great question. Awesome. So I didn't get to throw up our thank you for joining us slide, but we'll let it go for a minute. Thank you so much for joining us. Open to any questions, and if there's any modifications that you want, let me know too. Oh, Franklin, I think you're muted.
There. Thank you so much, Rachel. And Mia also. She put in a hard day's work there. Okay, we have a few questions. First question is, as soon as I attempt to do any range of motion, my spasticity kicks into full gear. How do I sort of manage that part so that I could go on with my range of motion?
Yeah, and Erin, if I don't say anything, jump in here. I would say the 2 or 3 most important things are to move slowly. So let's maybe just take the shoulder for example. So oftentimes that spasticity will kick in when we're trying to do something a little bit too quickly or at a little bit too great of a range. So move slowly and start with the joints closest to the center of your body. So if that just means, if we're moving the shoulder and you're finding that's really spastic, maybe we just start with the shoulder, we start with the neck and we start with the shoulder rolls. Then maybe we're just starting to ease into that. The arm, maybe the elbow is bent, and then we can start to move that full arm into a greater range of motion. So bring everything in first. Remember, going back to the turtle, bring everything in close to the body, get that moving, and then we can expand. We're moving really slowly, and we're feeling into that.
Okay.
And to add on to Rachel's commentary, just even trying different positions, like if sitting up is normally how you're trying it, maybe try laying down, try some of those kind of like mindful relaxation techniques prior to moving around, so you can really kind of inhibit all those like neurons that are really extra firing at that point. So sometimes that can help as well. But yeah, it's definitely, it takes a lot longer for sure. So I know that can be definitely frustrating, but it's doable.
Yeah, and also, you know, there's little things, and these aren't as much research backed, but there's things I found really helpful in my practice where I might take the bottom of the foot, okay, and this is not a spiky ball, but I might take a little ball and roll out the bottom of the foot, or I might take their hand with a spiky ball and do something, or I'll have them hold the spiky ball, and sometimes just more stimulation where they have a closed, I'm totally blanking on the word, but they have a closed chain, and that just allows the joint to feel a little bit more steady and a little bit more safe, and then it will start to move and the spasticity won't kick in as much. So yeah, and then those meditation techniques like Erin used. So just getting creative, getting and exploring and trying different things, that also might help.
So Rachel, can you talk a little bit more about that point you just made? It seems like I've heard that the bottom of the foot, there are a lot of sort of sensory nerves that when triggered, they exhibit some type of behavior. What exactly happens there? Do you know?
Yeah, so a lot of things can happen there, but the idea is that the hands and the feet have some of the highest amount of sensory endings in the body, along with the lips, but not important for what we're doing right now. So any way in movement where we can ground, what I call it grounding out or closed chain. So whether that means you're in a seated position and making sure that your legs aren't dangling off of your chair, or if you're seated or lying down, and making sure, you know, I often cue my my athletes to hold like a rag or a rolled up pair of socks, because you don't have to have super strong grip to hold a rolled up pair of socks. It's just giving you more biofeedback to the brain of, this is where the end of my limb is. It's holding something and or it's grounded onto the floor, so I feel more safe and more protected. It just has to do with the receptors and the brain and the spinal cord all talking to each other and communicating what feels safe, and proprioception wise, where is my hand in space, where is my leg in space, how far is it reaching. Yeah, so nervous system related.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Next question. I have now sat through a few of these sessions and seems like everyone is suggesting shoulder shrugs. Why are shoulder shrugs so important and common?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the way that we're designing these sessions and these movements and these classes, I'll give you kind of a couple reasons as to that, is to make them accessible for everybody. So for folks that maybe don't have as much movement through end range with their shoulders by themselves, we're always going to give eye and head and neck and shoulder movements as a really good starting position. It's accessible for most of the folks on here. So that's one reason. Another reason though is because just like I was talking about the range of motion, where the goal is to take a joint through its full range. When I'm doing this arm circle right now, we're focusing on the joint of my this bone right here called my humerus connected to my scapula. When we do shoulder shrugs, we're actually taking the scapula through a more full, it's almost full, through almost a full end range of motion. So those are two different, well, a lot of different joints within each of those, but those are two different areas that we're talking about. This does something very different than this, because this is targeting scapula, this is targeting more of the humerus and the whole shoulder complex up top. So yeah, we're making it accessible for folks. We're giving the scapulas a full range of motion. We're giving the arms and the humeruses a full range of motion. And that's just important for that whole range of motion, taking it through the full movement.
And I would add too, shoulder rolls I think are just a big bang for your buck. A lot of us are holding tension and stress in our upper traps up here. I think it's safe to say we're all stressed out more than normal in 2020. So just kind of activating those, opening up our chest. We're all kind of sitting with these, you know, holding our stress here, shoulders up by our ears, and then kind of in that posture where we're sitting. So we're tight through here, we're holding stress here. So just kind of start to loosen that area up so we can really be extra efficient with the rest of our movements through our body and like through our trunk and our arms.
Yeah.
Great. Go ahead, Rachel. Did you have anything?
Yeah, it's also such a good question, because there's a misconception out there that a tight muscle is overworked. And I'm going to kind of use the word quotations around tight, when really in reality, a tight muscle is shortened and it's typically weak because it's protecting something. So people sometimes think, oh, well, this is my tendency, so why would I want to do this? Again, it's that turtle metaphor. That area is tense. It's affected by the nervous system. It's also affected by one of your cranial nerves, vagus nerve, and it's most likely weak. As counterintuitive as that may sound, because you're like, well, I'm sitting like this all day. But actually, when we bring the muscle and we shorten it, and then we actively lengthen it, that's actually how we can start to loosen up that muscle. And that doesn't just go for the trap, that goes for everything throughout our body. So yeah, that's a misconception that is also out there.
Okay, yeah, great question. All right, next question. Do you recommend at least stretching twice a day with pressure relief every 30 minutes? Any specific stretching on balanced body motor equipment?
I'm not sure what balanced body motor equipment is.
Maybe I'm not reading that. MOTR. Well, let's talk about the recommended sort of stretch a routine or schedule.
So I would say this is super personal to your body type, to are you susceptible to pressure sores? I mean, I'm always encouraging more movement. So if you have the capacity and the resources and the time to stretch twice a day and to do pressure reliefs and to wiggle and to move and to change surfaces every 30 minutes, that's awesome. Do that. If that's not available to you for a number of reasons, then making sure you get some kind of movement or wiggle or range of motion or stretching in at least once a day, even if it's just for a 10-minute period when you go to bed or you wake up in the morning, then that's awesome too. So yeah, the repetitions that you just said, if you're able to do that, that's great. And that being said, if you feel like your body needs a third session of stretching, then maybe you throw that in too. Okay.
Next question from someone who's a C4 through 7 incomplete with a gliosis of spinal cord. She says, my neuro team of PTs have never mentioned stretching despite my spasticity, stiffness, numbness, severe neuro pain from neck down to my toes, relentless burning, knife-like on pins and needles. I can barely sit for more than a couple of minutes. I can hardly sleep in bed, terribly painful. My legs are like wet noodles. I need some help with stretching ideas to help with this hard pain and severe weakness and stiffness. Any ideas on my forelimbs that could also provide some relief from the pain, plus the severe osteoporosis in it and hips as well?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. So I would maybe start with the routine that we just did. If that doesn't feel, I'll say this, if that feel like it spikes your pain, again, oftentimes I find that the more movement a body gets, the more signals are being sent everywhere. And those signals can oftentimes get confused, especially in the beginning of a process, or especially when you introduce new movement. Those signals get confused and they're being misinterpreted as pain right now. So oftentimes I'll work with somebody and they'll say, oh my gosh, I slept awful, or the pain really spiked for a couple days, or my legs felt like they were on fire for a couple of hours afterwards. And we want to find a balance of pushing the movement and pushing the stretching so that we're getting some movement into your body, but we're also not tipping you over the edge of having an awful next few days. However, I will say though that spike in sensation, and I'm going to use the word sensation and not pain, it is pain for you, but it's signals that are being confused right now. That increased sensation in whatever way you're feeling that over your body isn't necessarily the worst. Let me think of a better way to say that. It doesn't necessarily mean we're doing damage to the body. It just means that we're sending more signals, and the brain and the fascia and the spinal cord is just trying to figure it out right now. So I would say keep going in finding a balance of a stretching routine. Try the one we did today that pushes you to a limit and might cause some new sensations. And I really, really encourage you, as you're doing it, to have the mindset of if you're worried about damage being done, like this is everything we did today is very safe movement. Assuming you're caretaker and you are on the same page. It's all very safe. We're not injuring anything. And sometimes it really fully embodying that as you're doing the movement can help with what we call neuroplasticity, where we're rewiring the brain and the body to say, oh, hey, actually, this isn't a pain signal. This is just my arm rotating around in a circle. So yeah, try those couple of things and find that balance between finding your edge, I would say.
And just to add to what Rachel said, yeah, the velocity piece is key. So going super slow, starting with a little bit at a time. You know, maybe don't jump into the full range of motion program. Like maybe say, okay, like let's just start with my lower extremities. Start really gentle, really slowly, see how your body tolerates it, but at the same time, continue to ground yourself in knowing that these movements are totally safe and not going to damage the tissue as long as you're going slowly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And last question. I'm a C4 and 5 complete injury. I have some limited range in my neck. Would you advise that I don't do any of the sort of neck stretching that you demonstrated?
Sorry, wait, did you say that they're fused through
4
there?
and 5, yeah. C4
Yeah.
and 5.
Yeah, so I would say, because maybe it's only C4, C5, and it's not, 5 levels, do a gentle range. Don't super push past anything. It's definitely okay to do a little bit of rotation and a little bit of cervical flexion and extension. You can remember, have the towel around your neck so you're not overdoing it. Yeah, but not going all the way around, because when you're forcing a movement with a fusion, it forces that movement into the vertebra above the fusion and below the fusion, and it can wear those two joints down a little bit quicker than we want to wear down. So just stay with a smaller range, but you can still definitely do most of that.
Okay, great point. That was the last question. Thank you so much, Rachel and Erin. So, Rachel, can you tease the next session on Saturday, September 26th? Waken your senses, open your eyes. What are you planning on covering?
Yes, I'm sorry. I've been saying that it was the shoulder session, so it's not the shoulder session. It's the yes. So okay, my bad, everybody. So yeah, this is going to be more. We're going to be working with the visual system more and tapping into a little bit about what I'm saying about how the more sensory input that we bring into the body, the more efficient our movement and our motor output is going to be. So that's why we're stimulating the head and the ears and the jaw and doing some of the tapping, because the more awareness you have of your body, the better you're going to be able to move it. The eyes are no different, and your inner ear, the vestibular system, is also no different. So if we can play with your eyes and the sensory input that your eyes is sending to the brain, we can also free up some movement and make that motor output a little bit more efficient. So we're going to be doing kind of a series of movements of what I call a check and a recheck. We're going to do some visual drills and games, and then we're going to do more movement and see if anything helped out with the movement.
Okay,
Yeah.
terrific.
Yeah.
So that's 5 weeks from today, everyone. Saturday, September 26th at 11 o'clock Pacific time. All right, thank you again, Rachel and Erin, as well as Mia. So a couple of other things. Just remember that the recording of this thing will be sent to everyone that registered for this presentation on Monday or Tuesday of this coming week. And again, these presentations are made possible from the grant that we received from the Reeve Foundation. So thank you again, everyone. Have a great rest of the weekend and stay safe. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Erin.
Great.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Good day.